Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, music listeners. Today, we will be reviewing the second LP from Canadian dancer turned pop star Tate McRae, Think Later. Tate McRae is most similar to artists like Billie Eilish and Olivia Rodrigo, and I think she includes some of the same pitfalls that both of those artists have for me, where they include many ballads and uninteresting songs, in my opinion, to the record that are unnecessary. And on this album, Think Later, I think that she fixes a lot of those, as the ballads are much more compelling and it's filled with many pop bangers as well. Starting off the album with Cut My Hair, Tate McRae claims that the sad girl bit has gotten a bit boring, and she comes off with a more confident approach, and this is a very catchy song, a very confident song from her, and I was very excited to see what was to come on the album after this one. Then we get into Greedy, which was a huge hit on TikTok, and it's no mystery why. This song is filled with bass, it has a super catchy chorus, basically checks all the boxes for a huge TikTok hit, and it's just a very feel-good song, and I'm glad that she's kept up the confident approach on this album as of yet. Then that confident approach is completely thrown out the window on the next track, Run for the Hills. I don't know what she was saying on the first track, saying that the sad girl bit got boring. Nope, right back into it with this one. I think that this song is one of the most generic pop songs on the record, and it was sad to see because the first two tracks were just so good, so confident, and it's thrown all out the window on this one. Get back into more of what I prefer and Hurt My Feelings, as I think that this song will be the most popular off of the record when it's all said and done. This song is super catchy. It's probably super relatable to the target audience, and it's probably my favorite track on the record. Then on Grave, it devolves into one of the biggest problems that I had on our last LP, which was the boring piano ballads. Now to some these may be interesting, but to me there's no substance at all. It's very boring, the lyrics don't have any substance, and it's kind of corny the way it tries to relate to anybody possible to find the highest target audience. It's especially unfortunate after the first four tracks were extremely innovative and extremely catchy, and this one just doesn't hit the mark at all. Then on the next track, Stay Done, I believe that the lyrics hold this one back. Much like Grave, it's another moody guitar ballad, but I believe that the guitar sounds pretty good on this one. It sounds something straight out of Austin by Post Malone, which was one of my favorite albums of this year. But honestly, this track doesn't hold up to the other ones, as the lyrics are mostly boring and a little bit corny, but I do like the instrumental. Now this is where the album starts to get a little all over the place with X's, as this was a big TikTok hit as well. Much like Greedy, it has a lot of bass, very catchy, but it goes to talking about how she doesn't need her exes and how they're all hung up on her. But on the previous tracks, she's talking about how she's hung up on her exes, and it doesn't make sense in the context of the album at all, but I still believe that this track is very good, very catchy, but the only thing that holds it back is its place in the album. Then we have a much needed change of pace with We're Not Alike, as this one doesn't include a very overproduced pop-hop beat for once, and it's talking about having a fake friend and not a boy for the first time on this album being the issue. And the bass guitar on this one is super slick. Once again, sounds like something out of Austin by Post Malone. And this is probably one of my favorites because of how different it is, and it's still super catchy like all the other pop bangers on here. Then with Calgary, named after her hometown, we see a more personal look on her life and her struggles with alcoholism, apparently. And I think that this song is okay. It's not one of the best songs on the album, sonically at least, but it does provide an interesting outlook on her life. Then we get into Messier, which is the longest song on the album, unfortunately, at almost 4 minutes. And this song is pretty generic, pretty boring, not much else to say about that one. Then on to the title track, Think Later. This is the most interesting of all the songs on the record, as this feels more like a party anthem than anything, with the super chunky bass. It's super catchy. I can imagine this song at a rave. It's one of my favorites on the album because of how different it is from everything else, and I really like it. Now Tate McRae does her best Rihanna impression on Guilty Conscience, as the chorus reminds me a lot of a Rihanna song from the early 2010s. And the only problem with this song for me personally is there's a hi-hat in the background that gets super distracting. Very hard to focus on the lyrics when that hi-hat is going off. It doesn't feel like it's mixed as well as the other songs. And this is only a slight blip in the silky smooth production that we've seen so far. Now the last two tracks aren't very interesting either, but I do want to say something about plastic palm trees. She tries to make a metaphor about looking at her like a plastic palm tree. What the hell does that mean? What does it mean? I have no idea. But sonically, it's a very compelling ballad, probably one of the best on the album. Is it a solid closer? Not really, but it does its job, I suppose. Now this album is a little all over the place emotionally and sonically, but the biggest issue is the fact that it's all over the place emotionally. I would have much rathered a 14-track album of just 2-minute TikTok hit pop bangers with pop-hop beats more than anything, because there's still too many ballads on here that just don't work for me personally. I'm sure there's someone out there that loves those songs, and that's fine, but they just don't work for me, and that was her biggest pitfall on her last LP as well. And if it was just pop-hop bangers on this one, I probably would have given it a higher score. But since it's a little all over the place, doesn't know what it's really going for, I'm going to give this album a 78. Thank you guys. Have a good one.